Greetings everyone and welcome. I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about Star Trek Infinite, a game that's going to be released this coming Thursday on October 12th, 2023. It is published by Paradox Interactive. It is a space-based 4X game. If you don't know what that is, the 4X's are explore, expand, exploit, and exterminate. Think Sid Meier's Civilization, but in space. And it's a pretty cool genre of games. There are many different games in this genre. Of the 5 people, including myself, who play them, I'm more of a Galactic Civilizations guy myself, but this game is based on Stellaris, which is the space-based 4X game that's also made by Paradox Interactive. So a lot of people kind of thought, hey, isn't this just going to be Stellaris but reskinned with Star Trek stuff? And the answer seems to be no. We've had 4 developer blogs so far, and they have made some significant changes to differentiate it from Stellaris, even though it is based on it, at least at a fundamental mechanical level. Although there have been a couple of big mechanical changes as well, and we'll cover those in a few minutes. Another question is, are these changes so big that they couldn't have just been DLC? We're not going to know for sure until we actually get it into our hands, but upon thinking about it, I do think it was a good idea to make this its own game and not just a DLC for Stellaris. We'll talk about that more at the end, but first let's go ahead and go over what the heck this even is. So it is a Star Trek game, it is a space-based 4X, and they have some sort of bullet points here on their website. We'll go over it here. I'll try and add in a little extra context from the developer blogs as we go along here. It says, your Star Trek story. With Star Trek Infinite, there's no singular way to play. It's how all these kinds of 4X games are, at least how they're supposed to be. You can usually do, diplomacy, espionage, conquest, cultural victories, all this kinds of stuff, and that's still the case here, although they have put an extra emphasis on diplomacy. They have a whole extra system in place that will discourage war. So there's 4 major factions in the game. So the only 4 factions that you can play as are the Federation, the Klingons or the KDF, the Romulans, and the Cardassians. There are other species, other races in the game, like the Ferengi, but those are support powers, so they're still like major players in that they have relevance and they're important in Star Trek like lore. They're not going to be major powers, but you can still interact with them in a significant way. And then there's like a whole bunch of other races like the Tellarians and stuff, and those are all going to be minor powers, probably relegated to like one planet or whatever. You've seen them. If you play these kinds of games, you kind of can already imagine what it's going to be like. They're going to have obviously a bunch of Star Trek art and characters and everything, and that factors into the price. It's not actually that expensive, but they do have to pay for licensing, I would imagine. But there's going to be Picard, there's going to be Janeway, Sisko, Data, there's going to be Garrick, there's going to be Gowron, there's going to be more characters even than that. I don't know, it doesn't say whether we're going to get Worf, but probably we'll get Worf, I would imagine. I don't think there's any voice acting. I don't think any of the actors have come back to voice their lines. It'd be pretty cool if they did. The important thing is that they get Gowron's eyes. Otherwise, they will be very dishonored. It's going to be really cool playing as Garrick. I mean, I like espionage in these kinds of games, but can you imagine playing as the Cardassians and then being able to do espionage with Garrick? That's pretty awesome. I'm not going to lie. It's pretty cool. They have ships from the show. It's not going to be as many as like some of these other games, like, Star Trek Timelines and Star Trek Online. But you're going to get your classics, right? Your Enterprises, your Enterprise D, your Defiant, your Intrepid, which is Voyager, all that kind of stuff. The Negvar. You're getting all your classic Star Trek ships, and if they don't have it at the beginning, I'm sure they'll add them. As far as the storytelling, they have enhanced. They use the word bespoke, but they have added more storytelling capability into the game than like Stellaris would offer. So we'll have to see how that actually plays out. Game does take place during that sort of golden era, 80s and 90s, Brannon Braga, TNG, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and Enterprise. So the actual timeline of this game, the storytelling takes place during that sort of roughly 150 years where, Picard and Janeway and everyone was all alive at the same time. But, in terms of the shows and maybe the driving factor for the aesthetic and all that, it's just really going to be TNG, Deep Space Nine and Voyager. So if you really like that era of Star Trek, and I do, it's my favorite era, that is going to be what this is all sort of based on here. They have made one big change. We're going to skip over to the developer blog real quick because they don't really mention it here on the website. So they're changing the way that you navigate the map, which is huge. I mean, that's a really big change. So there's a couple of ways to go. Again, I'm a Gauss Civ kind of guy, and in that game, it's more like Sid Meier's Civilization. There's a big grid and you can kind of move around and go wherever you want. But in a lot of the space-based ones, including Stellaris, it is a graph type situation with nodes, vertices, there's lines connecting the different nodes, and you kind of just have to traverse the graph. You have to go through all these intermediary points. You can't just go straight there, right? It's sort of like, you have to go on the highway. You can't just drive through a cornfield. So they didn't want to have that graph node-based system. And I do commend this. It does give a little bit of insight, peels back, let us see behind the hood a little bit what their thinking is in terms of making this game sort of its own thing here. And it says that it talks about that graph-based system, and it says in Star Trek it's simply a non-starter. You must be able to boldly go in a straight line any direction you choose at warp 9. But then what's stopping you from going straight to the other side of the map, past fog of war, past choke points, past whatever, and sort of the limitations you would normally have? So that's something they had to balance around. So they've took inspiration from Star Trek Voyager, which is kind of funny because they have a picture of the Galaxy D here, which is, the TNG Enterprise. I just noticed that. You would think this would be Voyager, a picture of Voyager, but whatever. So the idea is, Voyager traveled a very long distance from the Delta Quadrant all the way, back home to the Federation, but you couldn't just go in a straight shot. They didn't have enough fuel or food or, resources to just go straight there. So it's going to be more like Galactic Civilizations, where you have sort of a perimeter. It gives you a range, like a fleet range. You can't go past that. So you can't just immediately go to the other side of the map because you're not going to have enough fuel, you're not going to have enough food, you're not going to have enough shuttle pods to get there. So that's how Voyager was able to do it. They had 59 shuttle pods or whatever it was. They do have political boundaries, so you can't just go into another territory if if they have claim over it. So you do have those boundary lines, like in a lot of these games. Unless it says you're doing espionage, so I guess you could do it for spying. So you have to respect the boundaries of other civilizations, and you have to respect the sort of fleet support range of your empire. Otherwise, you can't go past that. But as long as you're within that, they're not forcing you to stay on that node and line grid anymore. You can just kind of go wherever you want, or at least that's how it sounds. We'll have to see how it actually plays out. I haven't actually seen any footage of the game itself, so I don't know. So why do I think that it's a good thing for them to make this its own game? Well, I don't think it's a cash grab. The big meaty expansions, the DLC for Stellaris, can be upwards of $20, and this is only $30. So when you add in the cost of the licensing for Paradox, this seems like a reasonable price. So then the question should be, if they were charging $60, $70, sure, I get it, right? It sounds like a cash grab. But the other thing is, well, maybe they're charging a fair price for it, but if it really is nothing more than a big meaty DLC, then why not just make it a DLC? Why make it its own game? Well, here's the thing. Stellaris has been around for a while, and it has a lot of expansions. It has a lot of DLC available. If you know someone who's into Star Trek, or maybe you're into Star Trek and you've never played one of these kinds of games before, and someone says, hey, have you heard about that new Star Trek DLC? And they're going to say, DLC? For what? Oh, well, you see, it's this game, and it's this huge game, and it has like 200 DLCs and whatever. They're going to say, I don't have time to get into all that. I don't want to do all that. You don't have to worry about that here. It's its own like little standalone product. So it's going to be it's going to reach a wider audience, especially an audience who's maybe interested in Star Trek but isn't interested in, getting into the rich, already existing library of Stellaris stuff. The other thing about it is that if they made this a DLC for Stellaris, then it would be Stellaris with 5% of it being DLC that's Star Trek. Here, it's 100% Star Trek. You open it up, it's right here in the name, Star Trek Infinite. That's the name of the game. Everything about the game, every menu, every selection, all of its own DLC, everything about the game is Star Trek, 100% through line. It's not like you have all this other Stellaris stuff going on and then randomly someone's playing as Klingons or whatever. It's not like that. The whole thing is Star Trek. And I think that was smart, to have it segregated, to have it be its own little thing, so that in the future, when they do add their own DLC for this, and I'm sure they will, it's sort of like a branching path. You know, they have these design decisions they made in order to adapt the sort of Stellaris-based system into something that works for Star Trek, and then it gets to continue on its own, and then Stellaris can also continue to develop in its own way. So I think it was a good idea to do it this way. I don't think it's a cash grab. That just doesn't make sense to me, and I don't think it would have been better as a DLC. I think this was the right move. It is available for pre-order. I'm not normally one of those people who would encourage pre-orders, and I'm not encouraging it now. I have pre-ordered it, however. It is available on their website or through Steam this coming Thursday on October 12th, and I'm going to start doing videos about the game. So if you want to see more of that, then feel free to subscribe, hit a like on the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.